Hi everyone, welcome back to the Communication and Conflict YouTube channel, promoting mindful communication and growth through conflict. So today's video is about Principle 5 from my book, A Guide to Effective Communication for Conflict Resolution. And Principle 5 is that we speak only for ourselves and speak using I statements. Now I always try to emphasize these aren't rules. They're just observations of what constitute the creation of effective communication. So it's more about saying, if we find ourselves in a difficult conversation, it's useful to keep these principles in mind because they support movement forward in the discussion rather than get us stuck in unresolved conflict. But a lot of the time we won't stick to the principles. But if we're aware of them, it will help us when we're getting involved in a more difficult discussion and we want to try to ensure it gets resolved. So speaking for ourselves, speaking using I statements. What struck me when I was about to do this video was that on my communication and conflict website, this is the most visited web page because it's quite a significant issue in relation to effective communication. Of all the videos I've made, it's the video that gets the most visits. I think it's about 16,000 at the moment is my video about using I statements. And I think it's because it is so relevant to what constitutes an effective conversation or what detracts from it when a conversation becomes difficult. So there's so many things really to say about the use of I statements, why they're not effective communication anyway, because they're inaccurate. That when we don't use I statements, it's inaccurate. So for example, I might say something like, London's a dangerous place to live, as if it's a fact rather than just my opinion. If I said I think London's a dangerous place to live, that's fine because it's my opinion. But if I say London is a dangerous place to live, as if it's a fact that everybody would agree to, that's where problems can arise in a lot of conversations, because we say something as if it's a fact, and then when someone doesn't agree with it, we kind of end up arguing with them to try to prove that we're right. But actually, ultimately, it's just our opinion. It's not a fact, it's just our opinion. So yeah, it's a fact, it's our opinion, but it's not an objective fact about, in this case, London being a dangerous place to live. I don't believe that, actually. I love London. I don't think it's a dangerous place to live, or certainly no more dangerous than a lot of places. But it's the kind of statement that people might make, which then means that people end up arguing over something that you can't really have a right or wrong answer to because everybody's got their own opinion. And if it's a discussion which says this is why I think it, and the other person says, well, this is why I see differently, that can become an interesting discussion. But if we start telling other people they're wrong to see things that way, like they should agree with our point of view, that's when a discussion gets stuck. So it's no longer an opportunity for learning. It becomes a situation where we're trying to beat the other person and defeat their point of view. and it's kind of interesting that, with a lot of things, again, I've mentioned before about if you see these kind of debates that go online, go ahead online, and people are kind of telling other people they're wrong about things, and their view is right, when actually it's just they have a different opinion because they come from a different place. So it's not really a right wrong discussion, even though it becomes that, and we can end up arguing over things that there can never be a right wrong answer to. But actually we can learn an enormous amount from people if we don't engage in it as if it's a right wrong discussion, but it's this is my perspective, what's your perspective, I wonder why you see it that way, oh, I wonder why you see it that way, isn't that interesting, what can we learn from that and how can we move on. But actually what does happen in a difficult conversation is everybody's trying to destroy the other person's perspective, as if when I'm here and I look at it on something, I see it this way, and somebody else is there and they look at it on it and see it the other way. They're trying to tell me I'm wrong to see it from this perspective because they're speaking for me. They're telling me what I should think, and it then becomes it's kind of a pointless discussion. It's kind of a useless discussion, and yet it actually pervades a lot of our kind of media interviews, a lot of our politician arguments, a lot of family arguments, workplace arguments. They become arguments where someone's got to be right and the other person's wrong over something that can only be a subjective perception. Now, as I said, it doesn't mean to say we can't understand or hear another person's perspective, but it doesn't mean to say we've got to destroy it and say they're wrong and say my view is what you should see. So we're not trying to speak for others if we accept that they can have a different perspective. And what's interesting to me is that when these discussions get quite locked, what tends to happen is that people can then start telling, like I had this experience the other day, someone started telling me why I see things the way I do, and in a sense that's why I'm wrong to see it that way. So like they told me that the reason I held a particular view was because I was threatened by a different view. So in a sense they were speaking for me in terms of what they thought I felt. And what then becomes clear is that people almost end up having a discussion with someone who's in their fantasy. They've created all these assumptions about the person. Okay, this person thinks this way because of this. They feel this way about it. They see it because they're a bad person. They see it because they have had this background and upbringing. They see it because they want this from the situation. They're abusive. They want to exploit or whatever. And people have created such a fantasy about the person they're speaking to. And I guess we all do this. We kind of create imaginings of why people are saying what they say. That in the end, in a sense, we only speak for them. We speak for them all the time. We tell them what they think. We tell them why they're thinking it. We tell them that they've got malicious motivations. We speak for them all the time, rather than listen to them and try to understand why they say things or see things the way they do, why they've done the things that they've done, which then means we're allowing them to speak for themselves. We're not speaking for them. I mean, it struck me in the conversation I was having the other day, I could have literally done a cardboard cutout of me and stood and put it there, and they would have told me what I was saying, what I was thinking, why I was thinking it, and all of these things, because what I had to say was completely ignored or not explored. Let's put it that way. They didn't have an interest in why I saw things the way I saw things. They were just telling me why I saw things the way I saw things, as if they knew. So they were speaking for me all the time. Everything that was said was that they knew why I said it. They knew what led me to say it. They said that I said it because of who I am and what I am. So as I say, I kind of became irrelevant to the discussion, really. They were speaking for me. So it's almost like we have a conversation with ourselves, but we use the other person to kind of bounce all our assumptions off. That the other person could just stand there and we would still kind of in a sense have the same conversation, because we're not listening to what they have to say. We're speaking for them all the time. And it's quite interesting really to watch difficult conversations when they happen like that, because you realise how they just can't go anywhere. They cannot go anywhere because no one's listening to what other people have to say in order to understand and kind of see a creative opportunity in it. It's like the other person just becomes, as I say, a kind of a thing, an object to bounce what we already think we know off, and so we stop listening. So the conversation doesn't get anywhere. So that's one of the ways in which speaking for others means that communication isn't effective and conflict resolution cannot happen, because we're not learning anything about the other person's point of view. We're not giving them the opportunity to speak for themselves, and we're spending more time speaking for them than we are just speaking for ourselves. And so I said earlier about the idea of saying London is a dangerous place. just as a simple example. But it could be any statement where we make it as a statement as if it's a fact, but actually it's just our opinion. And that can always mean that a conversation with somebody else could become difficult. On a lot of things, maybe people just won't care that we have this view. We say something to be true, they don't really bother one way or the other. But if it's something where it means it actually challenges them, and it might have an impact on them when we make this statement as if it's true rather than just our opinion, then that's why communication becomes difficult, and people feel threatened possibly, or they feel like we might make decisions based on our assumption, and not involve them in it because we haven't listened to their point of view. We just speak for them. And this is why speaking for others, or one of the many reasons why speaking for others just doesn't work as a form of effective communication. And when we speak for ourselves, and then in a sense invite others to speak for themselves by asking questions rather than speaking for them, then we learn and we interact and we connect with people and we give space to others to speak for themselves. We take the time to speak for ourselves and don't spend the time trying to claim we know what others think and feel. And so an effective conversation ensues. But when that doesn't happen, it's not an effective conversation. And battles ensue. They go nowhere because we're arguing over something which can never be right or wrong. It's just different opinions. So anyway, that's speaking for others, or an example of speaking for others. More in the book if you'd like to read more about it, if you'd like to consider this idea more. But I would ask for you to consider, whenever you're having a difficult conversation with someone, consider to what extent you are perhaps thinking you know why someone's saying what they say, or assuming that you know why they're doing what they do, that you're ascribing kind of malicious motivations to them, etc. And that actually by doing that, you're not supporting either of you really in moving forward. But also to notice if other people do it to you, and if they do, to kind of maybe say, what leads you to say that about me? Because then actually it gives you an opportunity to understand them better. I didn't do that the other day in my conversation, and it's something that I wish I had. But it was interesting to notice that someone did presume to know what I feel, why I feel it, what my motivations were. So as I say, I may have as well have been, sorry, spluttering there, I may as well have been just a cardboard cutout for them to kind of speak to, really, because I didn't really play any part in the conversation in the end. So yeah, that's speaking for ourselves, speaking in the I hope that's conveyed why it's more effective in a difficult conversation, and one where we want to move towards conflict resolution, to do that, and to be aware of the extent to which we might want to speak for others, or perhaps even do speak for others, and why that's not helping the conversation to move forward if we do. Let me know what you think. Comments below, please. That's Principle 5. I'll do Principle 6 soon. Please like, share, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Let me know any comments, questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.